The word of the day is ceasefire. We'll tell you what does that mean and how does that impact our own markets right here on Power Breakfast in the Mumbai News Center. I am Hormas Patakia. With me is Vamakshi Dhoria. Vamakshi, good morning. Well, the markets are cheering the announcements made by Donald Trump, and of course it is the sensex monthly expiry today. There's lots to catch up on.
Well, absolutely, Hormas. You know, the fall yesterday was quite measured despite the kind of spike that we saw in the escalation. But I mean, today, let's see what happens. There's a lot lined up on the show. Let's get started with the top headlines. US President Donald Trump announces a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran, reportedly mediated by Qatar. This comes after Iran's retaliatory strikes on the US base in Qatar.
Iran's foreign minister says there was no ceasefire agreement yet, but that Iran would stop fighting if Israeli attacks ended by 4 a.m. Iran time. Adds that the final decision on the cessation of military operations will be made later.
Stocks on Wall Street close higher as crude oil prices slide on Iran's restrained retaliation to U.S. attacks on Iran. The Dow surges more than 370 points. Stock futures also rise as President Trump announces the ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
Stocks in the Asia-Pacific are also trading higher after Donald Trump says Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire. The Nifty is indicating a gap-up start for our own markets.
Crude oil prices fall to their lowest level in more than a week as U.S. President Donald Trump said a ceasefire had been agreed between Iran and Israel, relieving worries of supply disruption in the area.
It's a completely flipped screen as to what it was just 24 hours earlier. We were mentioning that the Asian markets are in a sea of red today. They are in a sea of green. It's an absolutely green screen. As you can see, the Taiwanese index is trading with gains of close to 2%. The Hang Seng trading with gains of 1.5%. The gains also coming in from the other markets. The Japanese Nikkei is up 1.25%. The outperforming South Korean markets are outperforming today as well. They have been the outperformers in the region. The Kospi trading with gains of close to 3% as we speak. So it's a positive screen. Even the Shanghai Composite in China is trading 0.5% higher. So it's a positive start for the Asian screen considering the overnight developments. And pull up the GIFT Nifty as well. That'll give you an idea of how we are likely to start off. 230 points higher compared to yesterday's closing is what the implied open is suggesting. So we will open close to those June 12 highs above that 25,200 mark. It'll be interesting to see whether we sustain or not at those levels, Vamakshi.
Well, absolutely. The picture today is starkly different as to where we started off yesterday. But let's get you the top story from overnight. US President Donald Trump has said that a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran will go into force with a view to ending the conflict between the two nations. Take a look at this report.
Explosions were heard across Doha on Monday as Iran launched missiles at a U.S. airbase in Qatar's capital. The attack was retaliation for U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend, when it joined Israel's air war against Tehran. But just hours later, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on his Truth Social platform a, quote, complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran. He congratulated the two countries on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what he called the 12-day war. Trump had said Iran gave the United States notice prior to the missile attack in Doha, which he said made it possible for no lives to be lost. Early on Monday, Israel bombed a political prison in Tehran, in a renewed demonstration of its willingness to strike not only military and nuclear targets, but key pillars in Iran's ruling system. The Trump administration maintains its aim is to solely destroy Iran's nuclear program, not to open a wider war. But in a social media post on Sunday, Trump spoke of toppling the hardline clerical rulers, who have been Washington's main foes in the Middle East since Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution.
Well, here's a twist in the tale. Now, Iran's foreign minister said that there was no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. Now, he said that Israel, if it does not stop its aggression against Iran no later than 4 a.m., it has no intention to continue its response forward. And I quote, the final decision on the cessation of military operations will be made later, end of quote. Now, Israel has not yet issued an official statement regarding this ceasefire.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, in an interview to Fox News, explains President Trump's announcement of complete and total ceasefire agreement between Iran and Israel. He once again reiterated that the U.S. obliterated the Iranian nuclear program.
The president, without, knock on wood, having a single American casualty, obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. We are now in a place where we weren't a week ago. A week ago, Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran is incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. So that's a very, very big thing. We have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds, because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program. And I think that's what the president is really trying to figure out here, is to build a long-term settlement here to where we can have peace in the region, where our regional allies and, of course, the American people, most importantly, can be secured, but where we can ensure that the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program that has already happened is not something they try to rebuild.
Now, here's some political opinion from experts on what they make of Donald Trump's ceasefire announcement and what it means for the entire West Asia conflict.
It very much, of course, then also depends on Trump's ability to essentially get the Israelis to abide by this, because I'm not convinced at all that the Israelis are happy about this. I think the Israelis felt that now that they had managed to finally get the United States into a conflict with Iran, something they have tried for more than 20 years, they wanted this to go on much longer and drag the U.S. much deeper into the conflict in order to weaken Iran much, much more than what already has happened. As your reporter pointed out, the Iranians have taken several hits. I don't think, however, it's such a scenario in which the Iranians were ready to surrender or anything like that. And indeed, if there's a ceasefire and an end to the conflict without any resolution to the nuclear issue, that certainly doesn't sound like an Iranian surrender.
Well, futures on Wall Street jumped after a positive overnight session as U.S. President Donald Trump announced ceasefire timelines between Israel and Iran after what he termed as a 12-day war. Futures on the Dow Jones are up 0.5%, while those on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq futures rose as well. Key indices surged 1% each overnight despite Iran's attacks on U.S. air bases in Qatar as well as Iraq. The surge came after it was highlighted that the attacks were coordinated and not out of the blue, ensuring no human casualties.
Let's now also listen in to White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, who's discussing the U.S. strikes on Iran and the Trump tax bill.
Well, so far, the American actions have been extremely targeted and have not really disrupted global oil markets. If you look at the excess reserves that oil-producing countries have around the world, it's maybe about 3 times as big as total Iranian production. I think that we're highly confident that we have the votes to get it through the Senate, through the House, and get it signed by the 4th of July. And highly confident is really based on person-to-person conversations. I know that there's some people that are still holding out for this or for that, but I think the president is highly confident that we're going to pass this bill and we're going to pass it by the 4th of July.
On that note, let's slip into a very short break. Up next, we tell you how these overnight cues impact our own Indian market. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. We now have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like and the stocks that are likely to be in the news. First up, Vinny joins in to get us all the market cues we need to watch out for in today's trading session. Good morning, Vinny, and looks like it's a good session for the markets.
Absolutely, a good session is what we're watching out for, hands down, is what we're expecting here. But benchmark indices, yesterday what happened was a muted day that came in. It was quite low in the morning trading session. Then we saw a bit of a recovery. Nonetheless, the benchmark indices closed in in the red. The Nifty was down 0.5% almost. Sensex was down 0.6%. Outperformance which came in yesterday's trading session was from the broader end of the market. Nifty mid as well as the small cap saw a very, very sharp recovery coming in. Nifty mid cap was up 0.35% as well as small cap was up almost 0.7%. FIIs in yesterday's trading session, we saw a sell coming in from FIIs. 1,874 crores was FI selling, while DII saw some buying there. 5,591 crores. Now, today, important factors to watch out for. A lot that happened overnight, but the last commentary that we have coming in is that what Donald Trump or White House is saying that Israel and Iran had agreed for temporary ceasefire. As of now, we don't have any major confirmation coming in from these two countries, but this is from the White House point of view. After this, we've seen your U.S. stock index futures that have actually seen an advance coming in. Asian markets have opened in the green. Brent crude had gone below that $70 per barrel mark as well. S&P Global Ratings, we have an update coming in here as they have raised the forecast for India's GDP for 2025 to 6.5% from 6.3%. And overall, some bit of a positive cues coming in as of now. So we are expecting a strong start coming in for the Indian markets, a gap up start, more than 200-point uptick for the Nifty implied open is the indication right now.
Oh, yes, opening at very, very key levels. And Vinny, thanks a lot for that. Over to Upasna, who will list out the stocks that you need to keep an eye out for. Upasna, good morning. What's on your list?
Good morning. First up, let me start with All Cargo Logistics. The company has given its update for the month of May. It's a mixed update overall. LCL volumes up 3% on a month-on-month basis and down 4% on a Y-on-Y basis. Next up is Metro Brands. The company signs exclusive long-term distribution agreement with C&J Clark International and Clark International Services for distribution of products in India and neighborhood. Next up is Dixon Tech. Promoter Sunil Vachani sells 2.7% stake in the company worth 2,221 crores. So we'll be keeping an eye out on that as well. Next up is Edge Infra Engineering. The company is declared as the lowest bidder by Military Engineer Services for a project worth 117 crores. Next up is Garware Technical Fibers, company to acquire Norwegian Cordage offshore and trawl supply as a part of its global expansion strategy. Devyani International will also be in focus as company increases its stake in Skygate Hospitality from 80.7% to 86.13% for nearly about 106 crores. Enviro Infra also in focus as company gets LOI for Vento Power Infra from PTC India Financial for nearly about 115 crore. And lastly, Sona BLW will also be in focus as it appoints Jeffrey Mark Overly as the chairperson of the company. So all these counters will be looking out for today.
Well, lots of stock to watch out for in today's trading session. Thank you so much for that, Upasna. And finally, we now have Sudarshan joining in with cues from the F&O space. Good morning, Sudarshan.
Good morning, Mamakshi. So yesterday it was not a bad day of trade. While you see the Sensex and Nifty closed with minor cuts, but it was significantly off lows, while mid-cap index has relatively outperformed. Now, after positive global cues, GIFT Nifty is indicating start with an uptick of almost 200 points. As far as flows are concerned, yesterday we saw DIs buying more than rupees 5,900 crore, while it was a minor selling figure by FIs, which have sold nearly 1,900 crore. As far as index futures is concerned, FIs have sold there almost 1,200 crore, and they have added long positions of almost 1,100 contracts, and also at the same time they have added short positions of almost 5,300 contracts, and now FI's long exposure is around 23%. As far as option market is concerned, there we have seen 25,200 calls, seen addition of more than 13 lakh shares, and on the put side, 24,900 put has seen addition of almost 20 lakh shares. Now, as far as support for Nifty is concerned, it's around 24,860, that is 20-day moving average, and resistance is concerned, that is around 25,222, that is the recent high. Two stocks are in the band, and those are Biocon and RBL Bank, and two stocks have come out of the band, and those are AB Fashion and Titagarh Rail.
Keep an eye out on these names out of the F&O ban, AB Fashion and Titagarh. Sudarshan, thanks a lot for that. Take a short break. Cues from the commodities market, and those are the ones that are the most important today. Back on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let us now listen in to Mark Mobius, the chairman of Mobius Emerging Opportunities Fund, discussing the opportunity plays in the emerging markets amidst this West Asia conflict.
I think it's a lot of uncertainty, as you can imagine. I'm sitting here in Dubai, and it's really interesting. Life goes on. But in talking to real estate brokers, the big buyers of apartments here in Dubai are the Russians and the Iranians. So that gives you some idea of where the money is moving. But when we look at the markets, generally speaking, I think every market east of India is going to be in pretty good shape because they're not going to be affected that much.
Well, we now have Manisha Gupta joining in with all the updates from the world of commodities. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, and what a morning it has been. Like the overnight markets clearly have been looking at a lot of reaction coming in. Well, the crude oil prices at one point in time 11% down. Remember, we started Asia on Monday with 5.5% on the higher side, while closed at nearly 6%, 7-8% on the lower side. And we continue to see further declines coming in for Asia right now. Well, the crude is now trading at levels before the Iran-Israel war broke down. The Trump also announcing ceasefire agreement between both of these countries have led to all of that risk premium going off into the market. We've been constantly saying on how $10 to $12 of crude oil prices is a war premium, and the market has seen that coming off right now. Also, Tehran deciding to avoid targeting Strait of Hormuz has been yet another thing, and the markets will watch out for further details now. The dollar index declining on ceasefire reports also seems to be impacting. The Fed officials' target rate cut in July, if the inflation remains subdued, is yet another statement that seems to be working in sense of many of these commodities. But what the street will watch out for now is the Powell testimony to Congress today, and further near-term reactions would come in from that.
We keep an eye out on all of that. Manisha, thank you for those updates and bringing you the latest on the US-India free trade agreement front. The government sources have said that both the countries are keen on signing an interim deal before the July 9th deadline, but they are not desperate. Abhimanyu is joining in with more on this. Abhimanyu.
Intense negotiations are continuing between India and the United States for a bilateral trade agreement between both the countries. Both the countries are looking for an interim deal before the 9th of July. Now, that is when the pause on the imposition of reciprocal tariffs is slated to end, and both the countries remain keen on sealing an interim deal before that date. However, a government official has pointed out that the American side remains insistent on lower duty and higher access for American dairy and agricultural produce, as well as the genetically modified crops from the US into the Indian market, something which India has been resisting. It remains to be seen what exactly is going to be the arrangement which will be eventually worked out between both the sides, even as the government official pointed out that in case both the sides do not reach an agreement and the tariffs revert to the pre-April levels, then India will still enjoy a relative advantage with respect to other manufacturing economies, other economies which are exporting the same products to the United States, since India would be facing a lesser reciprocal tariff compared to several other economies. So clearly both the sides continue to remain in negotiations, but they are yet to be finalized as far as an interim deal is concerned.
Abhimanyu, thanks a lot for that update. Now, food credit disbursed by banks has doubled in the first 2 months of the current financial year. It hit 34,000 crore rupees, driven by strong wheat procurement by the Food Corporation of India and other state agencies. Now, Sapna Das is joining in with more on this. Sapna, what else are you picking up on this?
The data speaks for itself. So if you look at the financial year on year, well, that's a jump of almost 100%. It's double, 34,000 crores versus 17,000 crores April, May last year. And also calendar on calendar, the jump is even bigger. It's almost close to tenfold growth. So around 33,000 crores versus a mere 3,500 crores worth of offtake in terms of food credit by banks last year. So that's one piece of it. Well, of course, the reasons are wheat procurement. So if you look at the wheat procurement data itself, 30.88 million is somewhere the government has done in terms of the procurement, 16% higher year on year. And interestingly enough, this is also the highest among the last 3 Rabi marketing seasons. So if you look at, say, for example, 2023, the data, it was around 18 to 19 odd million tons of wheat had been procured. And that graph kept going up, and now we are almost close to 31 million odd. So what it has done is that it has really helped in terms of the food stock, overall food stock, and also in terms of the buffer requirement, and plus very important, what kind of allocation goes to the PDS system. That is basically the free food grains program that the government has been running. So, of course, if you look at the central pool as of now, around 38 million tons of wheat is there. This is double of what is required in terms of the PDS offtake. That's somewhere around 17 odd million tons is required in terms of the free food grain program. And plus, that 38 million odd tons is actually 4 to 5 million tons higher than your buffer requirement. So this is all very good news. Now, there's also another development that's happening parallelly because of the early monsoon. The Kharif sowing has actually already started, and what we are given to understand from the data, of course, and this is the latest number from the Food Ministry, is that the acreage, or rather the area sown, especially for rice, has actually gone up. It's already higher by around 11 odd %. These are May end numbers, early June. So, you know, the rest of the season still remains. So, net, this is a good indicator for the rural economy. This is what we are given to understand. And possibly, if this is the way that things will continue, you know, probably another bumper harvest, as far as Kharif at least is concerned, there is no reason to think that the growth in food credit is going to flag off. Or rather, it's expected to continue. That's what the broad expectation is.
Thank you so much for those details, Sapna. But let's revisit what the Asian markets are doing this morning. As far as the sentiment is concerned, you know, it's an absolutely starkly different looking screen as compared to yesterday. The Kospi is up over 2.5%. We're also seeing gains across Taiwan, which is up almost 2%. Hang Seng is also doing quite well, up 1.5%. The Japanese Nikkei is up 1%. And the GIFT Nifty will also come up for you on the screen. It was indicating an over 200-point uptick for the Indian markets. It still holds. It's in fact much better now. The implied open, indicates 240-point uptick for our own Indian markets. The Dow Jones as well. The futures that I'm talking about are up almost 200 points. Hormaz, what about oil?
Oh, yes. And oil, well, slight bit of recovery from the lows, if I can call it that, because Brent at one point was down almost 4.5%. It has recovered some ground from the lows. It's down around 2.5% as we speak. The NYMEX too, at the early bits of trade, was down around 5%. And that too has recovered some ground from lower levels. At one point had even slipped below the levels of June 12, which was the day when Israel had launched their attacks on Iran. So keep an eye out on oil prices. But with that, we call time on this edition of Power Breakfast. From Amakshi, me and the team that put this show together. Thank you so much for watching. Bazar Morning Call on the other side.